Stop for a moment. Before you decide whether to believe a single word I'm about to say, ask yourself one question. When was the last time you were absolutely certain that a thought in your mind was truly yours? Not influenced, not suggested, not quietly planted by someone who understood your habits better than you did. Your answer probably came instantly. That's exactly what makes this conversation so dangerous. The human mind loves certainty. It clings to confidence because confidence feels like safety. But certainty is not proof. Confidence is not truth. And what if the confidence you feel every day is itself the product of invisible influence? What if your strongest opinions, your biggest fears, your favorite choices, even the version of yourself you defend so passionately, were shaped long before you ever believed you chose them? If that possibility makes you uncomfortable, don't look away. Lean in. Because discomfort is often the first sign that reality is knocking on the door. Imagine walking through your entire life wearing a pair of glasses that you've forgotten you're wearing. Every color you see, every face you recognize, every decision you make passes through those lenses. You never question them because they have always been there. You assume the world simply looks that way. Then one day someone reaches over, removes the glasses for just a second, and suddenly everything changes. The colors shift. The shapes become clearer. Things that once seemed obvious now look completely different. The glasses weren't helping you see reality. They were editing it. Manipulation works the same way. It doesn't usually force you. It filters you. It quietly edits the information that reaches your awareness until your decisions feel natural, even when they were carefully engineered from the beginning. Most people imagine manipulation as something dramatic, a criminal mastermind, a scammer making impossible promises, a con artist convincing someone to hand over their life savings. Those stories make great movies because they're easy to recognize. Real manipulation is rarely that obvious. The most effective influence leaves no fingerprints. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand attention. It simply guides you toward a conclusion that feels like your own idea. By the time you notice it, the decision has already been made, and you're busy defending it as if it came from your deepest values. Think back to the last purchase you made that you didn't really need. Maybe it was a gadget, a subscription, a pair of shoes, or something you convinced yourself would finally improve your life. You probably had reasons, logical reasons, practical reasons. But were those reasons the cause of your decision, or were they the explanation your brain created after the decision had already been made? Neuroscience has repeatedly shown that the human brain often begins preparing decisions before we become consciously aware of making them. Your conscious mind is not always the captain of the ship. Sometimes it arrives on deck after the course has already been set, confidently explaining why the destination makes perfect sense. That realization is unsettling because it challenges one of the stories we tell ourselves every day. We like to believe we are independent thinkers. We picture ourselves weighing evidence, considering alternatives, and arriving at rational conclusions. Sometimes we do, but far more often than we'd like to admit, our minds rely on shortcuts. Those shortcuts exist for a good reason. They help us survive in a world overflowing with information. Without them, every tiny decision would exhaust us before breakfast. The problem is that every shortcut can also become an entrance. Every mental habit can become a doorway. And every doorway can be used by someone who understands how it works. Manipulation does not begin with controlling your actions. It begins with controlling your attention. Attention is the most valuable resource you possess because whatever captures it gains the opportunity to shape what comes next. Think about how many times you've reached for your phone without intending to. No alarm, no message, no urgent need. Just a quiet impulse that appeared almost automatically. That tiny moment reveals something profound. The strongest habits rarely feel forced. They feel inevitable. Once attention becomes predictable, behavior follows. Once behavior becomes repetitive, identity slowly changes to match it. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people are not manipulated because they are weak. They are manipulated because they are human. Every brain on Earth is built from the same ancient architecture. We all seek certainty. We all avoid unnecessary pain. We all respond to emotion before logic has time to catch up. Understanding these tendencies doesn't make you broken. It makes you aware of the operating system you've been running your entire life. Now consider how much of the modern world competes for that operating system. Advertisers study it, politicians study it, content creators study it, sales professionals study it, negotiators study it. Social media platforms are designed around it. Entire industries invest billions of dollars learning how to predict what captures your attention, what keeps you engaged, what triggers your emotions, and what increases the chances that you'll act without stopping to question why. This isn't science fiction. It's the everyday environment surrounding nearly every person alive. But here's where the story becomes more personal. The greatest manipulators in your life may never have intended to manipulate you at all. Parents shape children through repeated emotional patterns. Friends influence beliefs through acceptance and rejection. Teachers leave invisible frameworks for interpreting the world. Culture rewards certain behaviors while quietly discouraging others. Over time, these influences become internal voices. Eventually, you stop hearing the original speaker because the voice begins to sound like your own. Have you ever caught yourself saying something your parents used to say, even though you promised yourself you never would? Have you ever reacted emotionally before realizing you were repeating a pattern that had existed in your family for decades? Those moments are clues. They remind us that influence travels through generations, often unnoticed. We inherit more than genetics. We inherit expectations, assumptions, fears, ambitions, and emotional habits. Some serve us well. Others quietly limit us while pretending to protect us. The mind loves familiar stories, even painful ones. Familiarity creates comfort because the brain equates the known with safety. That is why people sometimes remain in unhealthy relationships, unfulfilling careers, or destructive routines long after recognizing they are unhappy. Leaving uncertainty feels more dangerous than staying uncomfortable. Manipulation thrives wherever fear becomes stronger than curiosity. Perhaps you've noticed another strange phenomenon. Two intelligent people can examine the same evidence and walk away believing completely opposite things. Each is convinced that logic supports their conclusion, yet emotion often determined the destination before logic built the road. Once identity attaches itself to a belief, changing that belief begins to feel like losing a piece of oneself. That's why arguments rarely change minds. They usually strengthen the defenses already standing. This is where awareness becomes your greatest advantage. The goal is not to become suspicious of everyone. The goal is to become curious about yourself. Curiosity interrupts automatic behavior. It slows the machinery long enough for observation to replace reaction. Instead of asking, "Is this true?" begin by asking, "Why does this feel true to me?" That single shift opens doors that certainty keeps locked. Notice what happens inside you when someone challenges an opinion you deeply value. Does your body tense before your mind responds? Does your heartbeat increase? Do you search for evidence supporting your position while ignoring everything else? Those reactions are not moral failures. They are features of the human mind. Recognizing them does not make you less intelligent. It makes you less predictable. Predictability is the currency of manipulation. The easier your reactions are to forecast, the easier they become to guide. If someone knows exactly what will make you angry, fearful, excited, or validated, they possess remarkable influence over your future choices. Every predictable trigger becomes another handle someone can grab without you noticing. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine becoming the kind of person who notices emotional reactions before acting on them. Imagine learning to pause between stimulus and response. Imagine becoming comfortable saying, "I don't know enough yet." That pause is more powerful than it appears. It is the space where freedom begins. Manipulation depends on speed. Awareness grows in stillness. Over the next journey together, we're going to examine patterns hiding in plain sight. Not to encourage fear, but to develop clarity. We'll explore how attention is captured, how beliefs are reinforced, how language shapes perception, why confidence can be manufactured, and how invisible pressures influence everyday decisions. You may recognize these patterns in advertisements. You may recognize them in conversations. You may even recognize them inside your own thinking. That recognition is not a reason for shame. It is the beginning of choice, because here's the truth very few people are willing to face. The greatest prison is not built from walls. It is built from unquestioned assumptions. The strongest chains are rarely made of steel. They are made of stories repeated so often that they stop sounding like stories and start sounding like reality. Once you learn to examine those stories, instead of automatically obeying them, something remarkable happens. The world does not become smaller. It becomes wider. Possibilities you never noticed begin to appear. Questions replace certainty. Observation replaces impulse. And step by step, decision by decision, you begin reclaiming something more valuable than confidence. You begin reclaiming authorship over your own mind. If manipulation were obvious, it would almost never work. The mind is naturally suspicious of anything that announces itself too loudly. We question the stranger who demands our trust. We hesitate when a promise sounds too perfect. We become alert when pressure is visible. The truly dangerous forms of influence understand this. They don't arrive with flashing lights. They arrive disguised as convenience, familiarity, entertainment, or even kindness. They rarely ask for control all at once. They ask for something much smaller, a moment of your attention, a tiny agreement, a simple habit. From there, the process unfolds one invisible step at a time. Imagine placing a single drop of dye into a glass of clear water. At first, the change is almost impossible to notice. The water still looks clean. It still appears harmless. But with every additional drop, the color deepens until the transformation is undeniable. No single drop caused the change. It was the accumulation that mattered. Influence works exactly the same way. Your beliefs rarely change because of one dramatic event. They change because thousands of tiny experiences slowly reshape the way you interpret reality. The brain is a prediction machine. Every second of every day, it tries to anticipate what will happen next. It fills in missing information before you consciously notice it. That's why you can finish familiar sentences before someone speaks the last word. That's why you can recognize a friend's face from a distance. Your mind is constantly completing patterns. This ability keeps you efficient, but it also creates one of your greatest vulnerabilities. Once the brain expects something to be true, it begins searching for evidence that confirms its expectation while quietly overlooking anything that challenges it. Think about how quickly first impressions form. Within moments of meeting someone, your mind begins constructing a story. Friendly, dangerous, confident, intelligent, arrogant, trustworthy. Those labels appear so effortlessly that they feel like observations instead of interpretations. Yet first impressions are often based on fragments of information. A tone of voice, a posture, a facial expression, clothing, timing. The mind fills in the rest. Most people never realize how much of their reality is built from assumptions disguised as certainty. Now ask yourself another question. How many of your opinions were formed after careful investigation, and how many simply arrived because they were repeated often enough? Repetition has extraordinary power. Familiar ideas begin to feel true simply because they are familiar. This doesn't happen because people are unintelligent. It happens because the brain values efficiency. Processing every claim from the beginning would consume enormous mental energy. Familiarity becomes a shortcut. The problem is that truth and repetition are not the same thing. This explains why slogans are repeated, why headlines echo the same phrases, why certain words appear again and again until they become part of everyday conversation. Repetition doesn't merely increase recognition, it lowers resistance. Eventually, the message stops feeling like someone else's opinion and starts feeling like common sense. But manipulation becomes even more effective when emotion enters the picture. Emotion changes the way memory works. You may struggle to remember what you ate 2 Tuesdays ago, but you can probably recall moments of intense embarrassment, excitement, fear, or joy with remarkable clarity. Emotion tells the brain, this matters, save this. Skilled communicators understand that people rarely remember every fact. They remember how something made them feel. Think back to a conversation that changed your life. Was it the exact words that transformed you? Or was it the emotional experience surrounding them? Chances are, the feeling came first, and the meaning followed. Emotion acts like glue for memory. Once an idea becomes attached to a powerful emotional state, Separating the two becomes surprisingly difficult. Fear deserves special attention because it narrows perception. When people feel threatened, their focus shrinks. Long-term thinking gives way to immediate survival. Complex questions become simple choices. Nuance disappears. In moments of fear, people crave certainty more than accuracy. That doesn't make fear bad. Fear has protected humanity for thousands of years. Without it, our ancestors would have ignored genuine dangers. But fear can also become a tool. Whoever defines the threat often gains influence over the solution. The opposite emotion can be equally persuasive. Hope expands imagination. It encourages people to picture a better future. Hope inspires effort and resilience, but it can also reduce skepticism. A person who desperately wants something to be true may accept weaker evidence than they otherwise would. This is why extraordinary promises deserve extraordinary examination. The stronger the emotional reward, the more carefully the claim should be evaluated. Another powerful force hides inside our desire to belong. Human beings are social by nature. For most of history, isolation could mean death. Survival depended on cooperation. Although the modern world looks very different, the ancient wiring remains. Acceptance feels rewarding. Rejection feels painful. This creates an invisible pressure to align with the beliefs and behaviors of the groups we value. Have you ever noticed yourself laughing at a joke that wasn't particularly funny simply because everyone else laughed? Or remaining silent when you disagreed with something because speaking up felt uncomfortable? Those moments reveal how deeply social influence shapes behavior. Most of the time, people don't need to be forced. They simply need to believe everyone else already agrees. This is one reason public confidence can be so persuasive. Certainty spreads. Confidence attracts attention, yet confidence and correctness are entirely different things. A person may speak with complete certainty while being completely mistaken. History is filled with confident individuals who passionately defended ideas later proven false. The volume of conviction does not determine the accuracy of a claim.